agenda. Our way to go now. Okay. Yeah.
I had 5 months on the side and took it out. I thought it,
Yeah.
I had the words, like, so why you have to think about it? And I was like, he knows, and I took it out.
Well, I
I'm
wrote it
sorry.
on my note. No. I wrote it on my note. So we're on the same page.
Are we streaming?
Yes, but congrats.
Is that a yes?
That's what live.
Okay.
I think we're good to go.
Okay.
Hello and welcome out there in YouTube world. I am going to call to order the meeting of the Children's Services Council of Leon County's Finance and Budget Committee meeting. Welcome to everyone in the room and anyone with a lot of free time on your hands online. Yes.
Take the time.
Yes, of course, that's what I was doing next. At 5:06 p.m., I'm calling it to order. And with that, Ms. Clay, will you do the roll call?
Mr. Hannah.
Here.
Commissioner Cummings. Dr. Glenn.
Here.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, ma'am. Have a quorum. The first item we actually need action on is the approval of the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda, as a working document for today's meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Dr. Glenn. A motion second without objection, show the agenda approved. Item 4 is general public comment from the general public. Ms. Clay, do we have comments from the
Yes.
general public?
We do. We have general public comment from Mr. Neil Dean.
Mr. Skeen, welcome to the Children's Services Council of Leon County.
Hang on a minute, come on, I get for carrying the phone around.
Bring your jar of nickels to the front and
My 365 nickels,
make us watch.
I have not spent any of the money you saved me last. It's still there. Wish Carmen were here, I would give it to her, like you have. I thought I would speak without waiting for the budget presentation, just in case it's a really long budget presentation. You know my view that the tax level of $500,000 for this was not a maximum, but a mandate for 2/3 of the voters. And it's about investing in children, not about creating, and it's about investing in children and creating additional wealth for the community. In a different vote, voters said we have to have a 1%, we're going to have a 1% sales tax. We want physical investment in our community. Part of that money is going to be for economic development. And nobody has ever said, let's give a little bit of that back. Not when they got a lot of grief over the stadium, not for any other reason, because there is no mechanism for that. Nobody hung their heads and gave the money back because, gee, maybe they didn't do this as well as they should. At your places, I've left you some reading material on the return on investment in children. You will see the perspective of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, from a chairman of the Federal Reserve, appointed by the second President Bush. I wrote this about 10 years ago. I edited it sort of lightly this morning, partly because I saw Mimi Graham is on the program a committee meeting, I think Thursday night, and she was actually a resource when I put this together 10 years ago, so it reminded me of it. But it seems to me the worst part of the decision to restrain the millage is not that you're giving money to taxpayers instead of children. It's that you're cheating the taxpayers of the kind of return on investment that you see in that document. It's a fabulous return on investment. It's like saying to reduce the millage, it's like saying, we don't think we'll invest so much money in Apple. We'll just let you keep it. It's an investment. It is an Apple size of a return on investment. That's why the Children's Services Council got 2/3 of the vote. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's an American issue. Here's what you'll see in the piece, just to take two or three points. Our communities are safer because educated, productive people are less likely to commit crimes of violence. Our economy is stronger because they qualify for better jobs, with better incomes, and are less likely to need government benefits. Our taxes are lower because we don't spend as much money on law enforcement and on social services. And most important of all, our social fabric is stronger. People feel successful and have hope rather than feel beaten down by despair and, of course, starved. So that's why I bring my tax bill every year to show you. Last year, my tax bill was about $2,500. Of that, $56 was for the Children's Services Council. If you had taxed me at the full amount, it would have been $18.50 more, a nickel a day. And I think, and that's for a house that's above the median of homeowners in the county. So most of the median rate would have been a $12.50 difference for the median homeowner in this county. So I think the taxpayers are counting on you. A 75% effort. Most of the school children in this county know that as a C. And I don't think I think you deserve better than a C, but the C has capped when you only put 75% of your effort in. So I hope you will consider that as you move forward in now the third year of the tax under this 10-year program of investment in children. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Clay, are there any other comments from the public?
No more public comment.
Very nice. That brings us to item 5, which is the adjusted budget review item. And Ms. Green, I don't know if you want me to, I think that's you. I feel pretty comfortable with this. Let me give the members of the committee a quick overview. If you go back 2 years, you remember that with great frequency, I would say, hey, it's real hard to put together a budget on, this is in the first year, on last year's budget because we didn't have one. At this time last year, we struggled with, we're just kind of limping into our second year. This quick amendment to our budget reflects a little bit of a change in timing for office furniture. We had originally put the purchase of office furniture in a previous budget year. We weren't able to get it in time, so it actually was spent this year. We just rolled over the funds. And so we want to kind of clean up our budget so that it doesn't look like we are, 2,000% over the allocation that the council approved for office furniture. And there's a couple of other minor tweaks, but that is that and the creation of the new positions, as well as the action that the committee took at our last meeting and the council approved that gave, I only know how to speak in buckets, but gave the bucket of funds to Ms. Green and her team to allocate as necessary, as long as she met the certain requirements that we put in front of her. And so with that, what you see on this long sheet is an adjustment made for mostly the office furniture. But if you just want to kind of go down and look at it, the first portion you'll see is salaries, benefits, and that's for the 5 positions, including the one that was approved at the March 23rd meeting, but they've advertised, the interviews are taking place and we're about to hire someone. So that's what that first yellow amount is. The second portion, is the audit fee. Again, it's sort of the way it fell. This is this is to adjust the fees that we are paying. Purvis Gray, is that the name of the auditing
Yes.
firm? For a 2-year engagement. It includes the first year, which was only a half a year, and the second year. And so that is the second part of the amendment. Going down to dues and subscriptions, this is just an adjustment of how I think John had booked this and just kind of booked it in the wrong category. We're switching it to the right category. And then the final one is one that Ms. Green knows that I hate, but and that's the security system that was necessary. It's the cameras that you see on the outside of the building, but certainly important to keep the folks at the Children's Services Council safe. And that is basically it. Ms. Green, did I miss anything that you think would be important to highlight?
You did not. I do want to just bring attention to the program investments. I had not thought to make this change. I was looking at it again today, Mr. Mitchell. But if you look at summer programmatic funding, you all originally approved 1.6 and we approved 1.71. So we made that adjustment. It says 1.8 because I wanted to try to keep the numbers even with the budget. And so we took that out of innovation funding. So it will really come in closer to 1.71. But with the budget adjustments, it's probably going to come down under that.
Right.
But I did just want to bring that. That's the only other thing.
And so, just so that I understand this, that what we approved was if we gave them everything before you went through and said, yes, no, this doesn't meet. So that's why you think it will come in below the one.
It usually comes in less.
Very good.
Definitely would not be more.
One quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you for explaining this. Just real quick, why are we not engaging AmeriCorps this step?
Because you all graciously gave me contract dollars for community engagement
Okay.
and for another program. I always mess the name up, program and quality assurance person.
Right.
And so now that there is flexibility in those contract dollars, it doesn't make sense to do AmeriCorps Vista. Rather, what we were going to use those for will be taken care of in that community engagement position.
And most importantly, if Ms. Green has a need and sees that that's the best way to fulfill it, she has the authority without coming back to
Right,
us
so
to move it around.
okay, perfect. All right. Thank you. That was my only question.
Were there any more questions in terms of the budget and just making sure it was all cleaned up and aligned? See, I don't know that we really need a vote on the presentation.
You could do it by consensus because we will need to take this to the council.
You know what, can I get a motion on the adjusted budget then?
I make a motion to approve the adjusted
Thank you
budget.
so much for
You're very
that.
welcome.
And with the second by Mr. Hannah, without objection, show it approved. I knew you would second it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually, it was a whisper. It was a. Item 2 is, B is the public comment. Is this?
If there was public comment on the recommendation,
Oh,
whenever you vote, we have to have public.
see, and look at that. Ms. Clay, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment. Oh,
So we just back.
I just rattled my neck.
Very nice.
Thank you, Mr. Skeen, for handling, and see, I knew, much like I heard a second, I also knew there was no public. Good, solid chair I am. Very nice. So this brings us to item 6, which is the discussion on fiscal year 23-24 tentative millage rate. Yes, ma'am.
So do we, since we approve this, does this have to go to the full council?
It does.
Okay, all right, and then the full council will then
And it-
approve it again?
Yes,
Okay,
because all we're doing is making a recommendation to
To them.
the full council
all right,
to approve essentially an amended budget.
okay, fair enough, okay, thank you.
Item 6 is a discussion on really the trend timeline. Ms. Green has, I think, done a great job on this long version. I guess everybody's got a long version now, yes. Kind of giving everybody a flavor as to what we believe will be, and it is a guesstimate of 4% increase in property values. Having said that, that guesstimate then applies different millage rates. And I think if you look, there's 0.375, there is 0.4375, and the full millage rate. And so that'll give you a flavor as to what it would generate, as well as what we have generated up to this point. But as it relates to the discussion of the trim timeline and sort of, I don't know if you want to start from today and go forward, or when we have to take an action and go backwards to today.
So we will have just a draft of that timeline in the packet at the next council meeting. Chair Mitchell, it actually starts in June. So the timeline itself will start in June, which is the month for this committee to bring forth just a recommendation to the council. The council will then just have a discussion about where you want that trim to be. The next meeting will, it's funny because you will vote on a tentative that will then go to hearing, as well as a tentative budget. And then you will vote on the final that will then go to hearing, as well as the final budget. So with the movement of the September meeting to the 14th, we will have the first trim hearing immediately following that meeting. 2 weeks later, we will have the final trim hearing, and I think right now we have it on September 28th. Will be that final hearing.
And just for everyone's sake, I know we brought this up maybe at the council meeting, maybe it was the last budget committee meeting, but we are required to let the property appraiser and the tax collector's office know what our proposal, what we are tentatively considering prior to, so that they can actually send out a trim notice. What date is that?
Well, so the property appraiser will give us preliminary valuation on June 1st. That's why we don't do anything before that time. And they will give us their final valuation on July 1st. That is the number that they give us on July 1st, which is what we will use to actually formulate our budget and prepare the budget for advertisement. And so as soon as we do that and you pass the first, as soon as we do that, we will provide that information to the property appraiser, which will prepare the notices that go out to the public. And that has to be done, I think it's 2 weeks after July 1st. So around July 15th is when they send those out.
And so is it, does the tax collector send out the trim notices or the property appraiser?
I think it's the tax collector.
Right.
That sends those out.
So we have to alert them as to what that number is. If they send them out on July 15th, surely they send them out on
July 1st, right? No, they send the value. Let me go get my phone because I had.
Okay, all right. I think this is important just to try to, when, not to say that we couldn't change our mind, but the council will need to at least have reached some sort of an initial decision. And that's why I wanted, today's May 1st. It's gonna happen very, very quickly. I think when Ms. Green gets back, we're gonna find out that we need to have sort of let them know.
I think it's June 1, isn't it? That would
July 2nd, July 1. Hold on, I have it.
Well, while she's pulling that up, they tell us on July 1st what the final number is that we have to build from. And we have to tell them within 2 weeks, or it's like by the 15th of this, I'm thinking the 17th for some reason, because maybe it's 15 business days. What our proposed millage rate and budget number will be. That is all goes into the system, and then they start mailing all that stuff out in August.
But from a practical standpoint, because of the way the dates start to fall, this is why when Holly took this, it's to get our brains working around 4%. It doesn't, there's nothing scientific about this. And especially with, we were having this discussion last year with real estate values going up. It's different than it is this year, where real estate values have sort of plateaued and are beginning to shrink a little. So, but this gets our brains starting to think, because we don't really have a lot of time between when the property appraiser tells us what we can expect, and it's only a draft, to what we can multiply that by, be it 0.5, 0.4375, 0.375 or lower. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull up the exact date that they mailed those out.
Okay, well, you're
Because they have to
pulling
let us
that up,
know.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we as a committee then, after we get the projection from the property appraiser, then we as a committee will look at it and make a recommendation to the full council.
Yes, ma'am.
So my numbers are right. It looks like this year we were around a 9.4% increase. You go from 6.9 to 7.6. An increase of about 9.4 to your point. Property values have kind of stabilized or level. So this use 4 as average potentially as what we can see. So can you tell me right now, how much money did we roll forward from 22 to 23, and how much we anticipating rolling forward from 23 to 24?
Yeah, that's, a lot will be determined with the results of this RFP. But that was the discussion that Ms. Green and I were having at the sort of, sort of sidebar. It was for everyone's benefit, I hope. It is a good question, and we won't know until there's a recommendation of how much to spend on responses to the.
So how much did we roll forward last year?
We rolled forward about 6 million, or no, about $10 million. Well, with this year's, when you say roll forward.
So of the 6.9 that we collected in fiscal year 22, how much did we roll?
That was all in reflections. We rolled.
How much did we spend? How much?
22.
Yeah, we didn't spend it.
So this is showing fiscal year 22. It's really fiscal year 21, 22, and then
Right.
fiscal year 22, 23. We rolled forward, actually more. We rolled forward
We're currently in our second year of collecting.
third year. Oh, I'm sorry,
Right.
Second year.
Yeah, but we're about to hit our.
Yeah, we're in our second
Yes.
year of collecting.
Yes.
Okay, and so what is it in, if right now, after paying the additional salaries and paying the money, the 1.7 that we gave out in the summer, what about do we have left?
So in the first year, let me do it this way. In the first year, we collected, just round numbers, $7 million. We paid out 1.5 in programs, bringing us down to 5.5, and about Dina, maybe John, you know what we paid out in total, if you count, I want to say we rolled forward, which was your original question, about $4 million.
Okay, and so
1.5%.
so as of now, then let's go about this another way. As of now, if you take out the increased salaries for staff, this new staff,
Right.
and the 1.7 that we spent, what is remaining what will be remaining through the end of this collection cycle of that 7.6?
Well, it's
If no more money is distributed.
It's 7.6 plus the 4.5.
Right.
So we had about 11 point something million dollars. You take out of that the 1.7 that we just spent, plus the salaries and expenses. And I want to say, this is back at the napkin in my head, sort of. We're looking at about $8.5 million, and I may be messing up the reserves. That's the only thing.
$8.5 million.
But we have procurements out on the street now.
Well, right, but he's saying without spending a spending of that.
Anymore, but still, there's still $8.5 million. It's in the bank.
Yes. It's actually, we have more in the bank, but
That would be.
we have about 8.5 right through the end of the fiscal year. I think I did that pretty close, didn't I?
Yeah, I would like to add if I can. So with the procurements on the street, we'll encumber about 10.1. Of that, about 3.5 will be issued before the end of the fiscal year, with the remaining rolling over to be issued during next fiscal year. So if you look at our budget now and you look at our estimate of awarding about 10.7 in programming, we're going to hit it at about 10.1, which leaves about $600,000-ish. So the rollover isn't a real rollover, because the majority of that rolls over will be encumbered from the procurements that are on the street now.
And what will probably help you, Mr. Hannah, is Dina is putting together, along with Sika, a spending plan and a spending schedule, so that you'll be able to follow. The reason I start to get nervous and hyperventilate, making sure we have enough money and enough flexibility that as we collect funds for this coming November, that we can meet everything that we are committing to, that also has some recurring aspects to it. And that, I guess we'll find out as soon as the responses are evaluated.
And so the 10.7 in total was something that we voted on and approved with the priority funding, the innovative funding, and the summer funding, correct?
Yeah, back several months ago.
But that would be voted on and approved annually.
Yes, sir. And it's also, we voted on it in concept because we didn't have actual proposals in front of us. So what Sika did was she put it, I'll use the word category as opposed to bucket, but she put it in categories of funding, and that is what conceptually the council.
So of the 10.7, we've already spent 1.7. And then we're looking now out on the street to do both the priority and the innovative, which is another 9. Is that right?
In concept, yes.
Okay. But there's nothing saying, obviously, we're not just to spend the money just for the sake of spending money.
No.
That's the maximum amount we would spend, right?
That's the maximum amount that I like to say encumber, because we're not gonna. Yeah, when the programs are selected, we're not gonna cut a check and send them all over. So we will have contracts that are effective August 1st. So effectively, they'll get 2 months.
And so,
And then we have a reporting process for them to get the next, but it's gonna roll over into the next fiscal year, so that we actually are encumbering the funding for that full contract.
But in terms of thinking of it as like put fiscal year aside, collect, accounts receivable, accounts payable, your mind is going in the right
and
direction.
so if you were then to collect another, if it stayed where it was, another $8 million plus the 8 you already have, you're at 16 point whatever, of which you're gonna spend potentially 10.7. Right?
Yes, Yes, and that is before summer funding kicks in.
So you would, if you're spending 10.7, you're generating 8. You're in the whole 2.7 of which would come out of the money that we've been
Already collected. Yes. Yeah.
But at some point, in order to maintain 10.7 or 11 million, you would then you're gonna run out of savings. You're gonna have to go to 0.5 at some point in order to continue that level of funding. Right.
What are we doing during this? We don't have to make any decisions, right? This
No,
is just for.
This is just discussion,
Okay.
but mostly so that, and I know you now have it, so that we understand what the timeline is. And why it's important that even though we're talking about money that we're gonna start rolling in, start to see in our bank accounts on November 1st. It seems, oh my gosh, it's just May, and you're talking about Thanksgiving. Yeah, but that's why.
So,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, once, we decide on the millage and the funds, start in the fall, November, December, what have you, then we as a committee will come back in and do another projected budget for the next fiscal year or
Actually, we'll have a budget
prior to.
base, yes, and it will be based on, even though we have not gone through all of the hearings, we will base it on the recommendation and the initial vote. And then we would have to adjust accordingly if, let's say we say, because I know this will delight Mr. Steen, let's just say we're going to reduce the millage rate to 0.25. And we realize, oh gosh, when we apply that, that's not enough money. We really need to go, now it will thrill him, to the full millage rate. So we would have to adjust at that point, but we're gonna have a proposed budget that the council has to vote on, approve, because we begin using that budget on October 1st.
So once we decide on the millage, then we can move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And it will be, it's projections, because we don't really know what the final number is going to be. And even when we know what the final number is from the property appraiser, even then it adjusts, because there's new construction there. I mean, there's stuff that just starts rolling in, and we get trickle dollars into our account.
Can we hear the timeline?
Yes.
Have it like,
So the date that you were talking about, or the property appraiser mails the trim notice, that's the 24th of August. So right around the 24th of August is when they mail the trim notices, and there are forms that we fill out so that they have the information that informs that. But the timeline that we have for our council. So Monday, June 5th is the Finance and Budget Committee, and that's when you'll have the budget discussion and preparation. I'll have kind of a draft budget. to look at.
Commissioner, this is what you're asking about.
And then on June 15th, which is the governing council meeting, you will have a trim and budget discussion. You don't select your trim, but you will have that discussion. If you remember last year, Mr. Mitchell just kind of went around and wanted to hear what everyone's thoughts were.
So what do you have, June 15 at what time?
4 p.m. That's our governing council.
that's right after our
Okay.
meeting, right?
No, that's going to be
That's
part
During the meeting.
Yeah.
No. That's your governing council meeting.
that we will discuss, an agenda item on
On the,
your agenda.
right, that's what I'm
Will
asking,
be
right,
this.
okay, all right, okay,
Right.
okay.
That is during the meeting.
Okay,
So not an additional meeting.
right, I get it, okay.
And I'll put all this in our packet.
So right up front, I've got a copy of the blueprint. Yeah, 3 o'clock.
That's not when we approve it though, just so you
Okay.
know. Okay, it's not when we approve it.
Okay.
Just a discussion.
And it will be the same discussion that we have on June 5th.
In our.
In this-
Okay.
So your voice
Okay.
will be heard.
Okay.
Then the governing council meeting on July 20th. We will have the draft budget review. We'll go through the trim public meeting schedule. And then the timeline for the trim hearing and the budget notice.
I'm sorry, what is July 20th?
That's your governing
The
council.
council meeting, okay.
You don't get to the hearing until September.
but we have to report to the property appraiser. Yeah, I guess it's just the property appraiser if they're sending out the trend notice. We have to report to somebody prior to August 24th. It's gotta be at the end of June or the beginning of July.
Yeah,
Oh, is it?
yeah,
Friday.
yeah, I thought I said August 4th.
No,
Oh, that's the due date.
You said August
August
24th
24th
is when they mail it.
right.
We have to let them know by August 4th.
24th is when they mail. So they mail the trim notice within 55 days after the certification of the value. So what they're doing is they certify their value, I think last year, that's July 1. Then they mail out notices to let everyone know when the hearings are gonna happen.
But in that, it tells them, here is what the Children's Services Council proposed millage rate is and what it will cost you. That's what the trim notice will say
Right.
on August 24th. So we're gonna have to have told them something.
Prior to that, yeah. So during our trim and budget discussion on June
Last
15th,
year we turned it in, so July.
We
at
did
the
it.
Council meeting, and right after that, you certified, did you have to fill out your DR 420 and all that other
Right.
stuff? But it was right after the July meeting, it was like the Friday, the very next day, you turned it all in,
Okay,
so that they had it in time.
there's a date before they mail it, and it's
in July.
later than I thought. I thought it was the very beginning of July. It sounds like it's kind of the middle of July.
We'll find the final day when they do the workshop.
We will
because
have
this is
to,
from
as a
last year.
council, have voted on a tentative millage rate in our July meeting.
July or June, that's what, on the June.
No, July.
The first discussion will be in June. We will then have a budget. That's when I will say,
Okay.
hey, what's everybody thinking?
Okay,
Then we'll have
that's
our
July
budget
20th.
committee meeting
Okay.
at the beginning of July.
Right,
And we, as a committee, will make a recommendation that will then be voted on in the middle of July.
July
Whatever.
20th.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Now, that's, and then almost immediately thereafter, we will have to let the property appraiser know
Okay.
what it is.
Okay, so that's what I did not tell y'all. It's August 4th is the date they have, and that's when we report. By that date, we have to report the prior year's millage rate, the current year's proposed millage rate, the current year rollback rate. It's all calculated for us in these forms that we do online. Now, this was last year's book. They give us a new book, and they do the new training and all of that. So this is last year's workbook that I'm looking at. We haven't gotten any of that information yet. So we had to do it after
in
the July meeting in order to make this August.
In our July meeting,
On July 3rd, by the way, which is the day before 4th of July, just saying.
we will have a,
July 3rd.
No, not July 3rd.
That's on my calendar, well, it's on my calendar, I don't know, but July 3rd is the budget and finance committee meeting, which is the meeting before our July 20th meeting.
It is, but under whatever it is on our agenda, I was going to say
To
to you
change
guys
it?
that you want to change it.
Okay.
so before we get to changing, we will need, this is the important thing, we will need as a full council to have made a preliminary, not that it cannot change based on public comment, but a preliminary decision by July 20th.
Correct, that's the date.
That's the day.
July 20th, when we have the full council meeting.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I have it.
Mr. Hammer.
So can I go back to this sheet that we approved? Did I second it? Did we
Yes.
approve?
Silently seconded.
Yeah, so if we have $10.7 million of potential funding. That does not include any other expenses, salaries or anything. What is the total? What is the 12.5?
That was
Is that
our,
everything?
that was our total operating budget for this year. That included every,
So the 10.7, so that additional 1.8 million is all the salaries and everything else?
yes.
Or
Show, I think that the reason there's a difference is because in both of the first 2 years, we took 5% and moved it to our reserve. That's,
No, that isn't really what I'm trying to drive home is what is if you take the 10.7. And then wasn't there another amount of discretionary money that we awarded to the executive director up to 600,000?
it was by quarter, 150,000 per quarter for.
So up to 600,000 a year.
Yeah.
So would you add that to the 10.7? So now it's 11.3.
No,
It's actually
because
included in it.
it's included in it. So let's go back to the program investments. And I think Chair Mitchell said that. So these were just categories that we came up with for program investments. And we actually had a meeting before this meeting where I said, what we will do, and you will see in the spending plan, is instead of these 4 categories, you will see the categories that coincide with what you all said was important and the procurements that go along with that.
Okay.
So it'll be easier for you to see.
Okay. So the 8 areas.
So the spending plan
And
is,
so-
the SIPS funding is contained within that
The
10.1.
10.7.
Yeah, 10.7.
Okay. And so not contained in the 10.7 is all the additional.
Everything else.
Everything
Right,
else, right?
right.
And so what is, when you add the 10.7 to everything else, what is that?
Total expense, 12.5.
Which,
And in the amended budget, 12.6.
okay, so, but the 12.5 exceeds even 0.5 of a millage rate, right? So even at, no, 0.5 of a millage rate, you're at 10 million, 10.5. So we're exceeding, even with that budget, we're exceeding the maximum millage rate by
Okay.
2 million.
But here's, we are using. If we were to fund, we're not funding. We will always have a chunk of money from the previous fiscal year, to roll over to the next, just because of the way we were set up. But if we were to come in, if this is your question, if we were to come in and say, we want to fund $10 million worth of programs from these 2 RFPs that are out there on the street right now, we would never be able to raise enough funds based on what our millage rate is to meet those. And if you remember last week, I said, everybody likes to say yes. Sometimes it's important to this was when we were voting on 69% instead of 75% of the scores, is finding ways to begin to say no to programs, even though it means some kids are getting served. We're going to have to start making tough decisions as
Just in my simple math, if we're raising at the most 10.5 and we're spending 12.5, can't sustain that.
We're not spending 12.5.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I can add some clarity, a large piece of this is rollover from last year.
But that rollover is that's gonna go away at some point. We're gonna have to spend it all. If we're deficit spending, we're gonna spend all of that roll forward.
Yes, is the answer.
Right.
You're totally right. It would be probably 3 years out. It would be in kind of year 3 from this next year that we would run out of the money that we have saved.
So in a normal year, this program investment may not be $10 million. It's 10 this year because it pulled some from last year and it's got some from this year.
But actually, though, we don't even know what it's going to be yet. These are just kind of throw it against the wall, see what. No evaluation has been performed yet.
Okay, but we have the opportunity to make those changes, right? Based on
Based on
what
what.
our budget is,
Right.
right? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, just one
yeah.
more thing. So for example, the procurements that we have on the street now, they are 3, 2, and 1 year contracts. So the mentoring is a 1 year contract. do not expect that it's going to recur. The family strengthening
Right.
and parent education, those are 2-year contracts. And in our spending plan, we're encumbering that money now. So it may not continue. This council may pick a different priority and may choose, we don't want to do that anymore, or we've seen what it does. It now has its own funding stream, and we want to look at a different priority, and we would be using the money from that year to determine what that priority is, or to fund that priority. I don't think the expectation is that once you pick the programs, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the expectation is that we're going to constantly fund those programs. I think we get them started and we are helping them to build capacity and helping them to look for other funding streams so that this council can change its priorities. And the other thing is, while people may not want to hear it, we may determine, you know what, mentoring was good, but that's probably not the best investment. For now it was, and it did what it was supposed to do, but the council may say, yeah, we're looking at those benefits. I think we might want to do something else.
Mr. Anna, to your point, we won't, even if, we'll use mentoring because it's the 1-year contract, we won't really even know if it worked. And so people are going to stand at that podium in the same way they did when they said, you need to drop the dollar amount that you're funding. And they're going to say, we have not had an opportunity to show you how good our program is. You need to fund it for 1 more year. And that was my whole point. Not that people don't like to say, no, Dr. Glenn and then Mr. Hannah.
No, that's why evaluation is so important to me. And that's why I keep on saying monitoring and evaluating these programs are extremely significant, because if they can't prove to us that it's working, and if we're not getting our return on the investment, I said we don't fund them anymore. Yeah, and if they're not proving that they are having an impact on this community, get rid of them and do another program. The ones where the evaluators can stand up there and give us documented proof that this is working and improving the lives of children in our county, let's keep funding them. I'll throw more money at them. But if they can't, and that's why I'm harping on these quality people that we're hiring, because I'm expecting them to help us be able to show that proof. And then with that proof, let's keep on funding the ones that work. The ones that don't cut the mustard, you know where I am with my percentage. When they don't cut the mustard, we reprioritize dollars. And so that, shifts things quite a bit. And we can prioritize other areas at different funding levels.
Mr. Hannah, did you?
No, well, I can tell you from experience, it's hard to cut people off.
I understand that. I
It's a lot
agree.
easier.
Yeah.
But I do have some concern with us spending in our budget $12.5 million in total and only raising, if we went with the highest model, $10.5 million. Because sometimes you can do away with one program, and at the end of the day, you're going to have to cut back on the amount of money that you're spending altogether because you aren't generating the revenue to sustain it. So
when just kind of a side note, when and to Sika and Dina's credit, and sitting down and meeting with me on a monthly basis about it, the one thing that we can control is our expenses, the overhead of running the operation. And I'll brag on Dina for a second. It may seem almost insignificant, but I challenged Dina to find a way to reduce the costs that we were paying for our HR services. And to her credit, I was like almost in tears, and this may sound really silly because it's just it's a small pot of money, but Dina went back to the vendor and said, this is just not good enough. You're going to need to find a way. And the vendor was good enough to reduce their price and pretty dramatically. Dramatic, not in terms of $12.5 million, but dramatic in terms of what their overall contract was. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be very sensitive to how dollars are spent that don't include direct services to the kids and the families. And I do, I tip my hat to to Dina and Sika and Jacinta. And Holly, you're sitting here, so I have to give you a but really to the team for being sensitive. And it was part of the reason that I was so adamant that we try to hire contract employees as opposed to, someone with benefits. So Mr. Hagan, I think you make a really good point, and that is we have to keep our eye really a year, 2 years, and 3 years out and make a determination as to what's working and what's not. And when it's not working, cut it off as quickly as possible.
But if I can do that one more thing, and it's not really a but, I think it's not a but. So because we rolled over the 4.5, we didn't get a chance to fund anything other than summer. So really the 12 is making up for that. So we're using that to try to fund so that money is not just sitting there. The other thing is, I believe this council will see a significant decrease when you're looking at the operating expense. Because this was a setup year, we won't have that next year. It'll be pretty what's the word? Level? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
It would be level. And so yeah. So we're definitely, I hear everything that you're saying for sure. And understand your reasons.
The next meeting date is scheduled for June 5th. But before I talk about the next meeting date, I'd like to talk about the July meeting date. That is not on the agenda, but I think I know that it's on the agenda.
July
As
3rd.
I get it, I have it.
So July 3rd is the date, so that is the original date of this committee meeting. And it is the day before the 4th of July. And I just have a feeling people are not necessarily want to come here
That's a
and
good feeling.
take a break. So I wanted to propose, as I put in our draft schedule, moving this meeting to the 10th. So that would be Monday, July 10th. It doesn't throw our schedule off.
We have an executive.
Monday, July 10th, which is back a week.
Back a week, but it conflicts with the executive committee.
Do you want to do it at 4 o'clock?
I don't know
Maybe
that
we
you'll need it.
start this meeting at 4:30. I have no idea, but maybe we could do this meeting at 4:30 and then do the executive committee immediately thereafter at 5 o'clock. The only thing that will be on this agenda is for the July meeting is the discussion of trend. And hopefully in our June meeting, we will have sort of vetted our thoughts on that even more so than we did today. We will also have the benefit of hearing sort of what possible funding is out there for these RFPs that are out on the street. So it'll give you a better flavor as to how much is there.
What is the, I'm not on the other committee, so that's, I don't know how many. You want to, we can do this.
No, sir. Sir, just the executive and finance. Okay.
The other thing, if I may offer, is I know what we have on the next agenda for executive. Don't know that you, it's like.
Well, what we could do is just tell, Mr. Watts is the only one that Dr. Glenn and I are on both. So what we could do is set a start time, give him time to get from DCF at 5:30. In the event that we don't need one, we can text him and say we don't need one, and Dr. Glenn and I are here for a quorum, so we can call it and then adjourn it,
We'll know ahead of time.
Okay.
And
So
so if we don't need it, cancel it because we'll need to.
So I have a family vacation with my in-laws the week of the 5th of June 5th. Is there any way y'all can do that? What day is the week of the 5th?
It's on Monday.
Monday.
Is there any way y'all can meet on the 12th instead of the 5th? If we're moving back from the 3rd to the 10th.
July 12th.
That conference with the executive committee meeting.
No. June,
Wait, wait,
June
we're in
12th, that's again.
Yeah, it's June
But
12th.
that's
Okay.
okay.
June 5th, you have a
I
So-
do.
But we can go to the 6th. I mean, oh, no,
Well, so
you're
how,
fine.
how about we do the 12th and
I
we
can come to this meeting, but I'll go home with an empty house. So.
No. Don't let that happen.
After this year, I tell my wife.
We can do both on the 12th perhaps.
Both on the 12th.
Yeah.
and both, so both double decker on, in June and July?
and probably July won't need to happen, so
Okay.
but we'll schedule both of them. So yes, it's the answer.
So we're saying budget at 5 on
So,
the 12th?
Okay, so
June 12th,
Yes, let's,
both meetings.
can we maybe think about trying 4:30 for the budget committee? Would that work? Okay, Commissioner, would that work okay for you? Dr. Glenn, 4:30?
I will try.
Okay, so let's move the finance committee to 4:30 on June 12th.
okay. Got it.
And the executive committee immediately thereafter
On June 12th.
on June 12th. Got it. And on July
Same thing.
10th.
Yeah,
the
same
same
thing.
thing.
So what time are you posting the start of the executive committee meeting? At 5 or 5:30?
5:30.
5:30, okay, all right.
So on both days, it'll go from, the budget committee will meet at 4:30 and the executive committee at 5:30.
So
So
on August the 7th, I'm just messing. Oh, no.
I have a haircut. It must be,
So June the 12th and July the 10th, is that what we are?
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
So on both of those meetings, back to
4:30.
back, 4:30 will be finance and budget. And 5:30 will be executive on
Yes.
both those days. So that's pretty fun.
I'll state it on invite. She just did it, she just did it.
And then right now in August, since we're on it,
that's my little grin on
on
the
it,
face.
we are planning, if all goes well, we should not need any meetings in August, since we were gonna try to take on this.
Okay, that would be awesome. And then September. I'm out of pocket for chunk in September, but I'll be here. Okay.
Starting when?
And this one.
May 15th.
Okay.
He gets it, right, yeah.
Okay.
He was hoping for exactly. What's wrong?
Forgot that we got notified by our vice chair. He will not be available on Mondays. Starting
That's May 15th after 4 p.m.
May 15th after 4 p.m.
Oh. Recalculating. All right, so we have to move from May.
So
Maybe
let's
on
just,
Monday.
we're keeping the, all right, so let's say
So budget is
same
fine.
dates, but 5 o'clock, not 4:30 for budget. Ms. Clay, you're changing?
I'm lit,
Okay, so Commissioner, from, it's only Dr. Glenn and I that will be affected by Mr. Watson's move. The only difference on the finance committee is that instead of 4:30 on the 12th of June and the 10th of July, it will be 5 o'clock and not 4:30.
Okay, so, and then we will work with
Then we
executive
will.
committee
Right.
to see when we reschedule with the three of you.
Now, one of the program services committee, that's the same week on Thursday though, right?
It is, but it's just, yeah, so basically you're gonna get rid of one meeting and add it.
We'll deal with that
Yeah.
for Commissioner Cummings and
So we,
Superintendent.
yes, so we are 5 o'clock on June 12th for finance and budget. 5 o'clock on July 10th for finance and budget.
Okay,
We will work with the executive committee to reschedule.
let's just leave it at that. Okay.
Ms. Clay, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Okay,
And Mr. Hannah will stay there.
and I, wait.
Well, the
No.
total stays employed.
You will, you will.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think the money, if we stayed at the 0.375 and raised $8 million next year, would we have enough roll forward to cover the 12.5?
Short answer is yes, with, yes. But I want to hold that until, for two things. One, until Dina and I can meet again. And two, until I see at least some initial results of what the evaluation committee makes a determination. But the short answer is for fiscal year 23-24, yes.
The amount of funding. Yeah,
Yes, we
we
definitely.
have a cap on the amount of funding for the RFPs.
Right, but in the short answer to the superintendent's question is yes. We would have enough if we kept it at 0.375. We just, I don't know how much luxury we would have the following year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any.
A little, but not a lot. Which would be the reason that the 150,000 per quarter that SEQA will bring back to us, that we may have to make some tough choices. And there's no saying that the full 150,000 per quarter would be spent anyway, but that would be probably the first to go.
And then also keep in mind, our reserve is now, will be 10% moving into the new fiscal year.
Well, it's still 5%. We're not upping it to 10%. It's just what we would have what we collected, it would have been 10% of that.
Right.
So, but of the $8 million collected, 305,000 is pulled off in the reserves. To go from 5 to 10%.
It's still whatever we collect, 5% goes into reserves. With, if you remember at last year's budget committee, we talked about when is the time to stop putting additional money in reserve because we have, right, we have enough to so between Dina, myself and SEQA, we will have the numbers fully crunched for you for the next meeting. This was just an initial conversation, which was only going to be a 5-minute conversation. So with that, I show our next meeting of this committee being Monday, June 12th at 5 p.m. The next meeting agenda will focus in on a little bit of the millage rate and the impact, and the beginning of a proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24. Is there did I miss anything for that agenda? No.
Can
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Under committee member comments.
Thank you. So when we do convene again, will you all have the spending plan for the program investments separated out during that period of time so we can see that more clearly?
You'll actually see that at the next council meeting this month.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
But yes is the answer. It will be built
But yes.
into that.
It will be built into the draft.
Any other committee member comments, Commissioner Cummings?
Great meeting.
Superintendent, thank you very much. Without further comment, it's 6:08 and I am